Israeli franchise of Ben & Jerry's. They came to an agreement with the ice cream maker's parent company, Unilever, following a year of legal battling over their West Bank Jewish community boycott. And the ice cream will now continue to be sold in Israel and the West Bank. I can hear the applause through my earpiece. But Israeli officials and the country's supporters worldwide hailed that decision now a major victory against the anti-Israel boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement known as BDS. Unilever sold its Ben & Jerry's interest in Israel to Avi Zinger, the Israeli manufacturer and distributor of the brand. He'll now be independent. But for much more on this story, we're joined in the studio by Arsen Ostrovsky, attorney and CEO of the International Legal Forum. Thanks for joining us. I know you were one of the champions of this issue throughout this last year. The International Legal Forum, I think, was one of the first groups to initiate legal proceedings, essentially, to push back on this in the U.S. A good day for this story now? I mean, I understand that Avi Zinger is going to have really sole control over the brand in Israel.
It's a great day. It's certainly a sweet victory and a clear, unequivocal repudiation of the global racist, anti-Semitic BDS movement. What this ultimately is, it's a win for justice, for truth, for the rule of law against this campaign of hate, of bigotry and intimidation by Ben & Jerry's against the Israeli brand.
I mean, they were, just to look at Vermont for a minute, the Ben & Jerry's that still sits in Vermont, the head of the company here, or at least their board. I mean, they were nasty to the end on this issue, saying, I think in quote, while our parent company is taking this decision, we do not agree with it. So they made sure to kind of, to put it this way, spit on the issue on the way out the door even here. What's driving them? Is this still, do they think they're still winning points or selling more ice cream based on this? Or is it all boiled down to some kind of ideology they carry?
You made an important point that when Ben & Jerry's board said we do not agree with this decision in response to the Unilever statement, what they didn't agree with was when Unilever had actually said in response that they will continue operations in Israel. So the Ben & Jerry's board made it very clear that this is not just about Judea and Samaria. This is about all of Israel. So that was their intention. It wasn't just the settlements. They wanted to boycott the entirety of the state of Israel. And I think what this campaign, much like the BDS campaign as a whole, really underscored was that this has nothing to do with promoting Palestinian rights. This has nothing to do with changing Israeli policy. It has everything to do with denying Israel our rights, and under a campaign that is rooted in bigotry, in hatred, and ultimately in anti-Semitism.
I mean, I think they try to paint it as, we put our, money where our mouth is. We stand behind causes we believe in. I don't think they're taking any stands or pulling ice cream from shelves in any U.S. states banning abortion or anything like that at this point. It seems to be a focus on Israel. The BDS movement in general here, and I know you're very clued into this. I mean, they trumpeted this, obviously, this last year as a big victory when it emerged. It was a popular issue for them. But did this whole Ben & Jerry's saga have much impact on the movement or give them much traction? What's the situation right now with the BDS efforts?
Well, the BDS movement and some organizations behind it, including from some groups like Human Rights Watch, which were really acting not just behind the scenes, but as we saw recently, we're really leading at the forefront with these videos that were starting to force new employees to watch, to indoctrinate them about the conflict. So from the moment that Ben & Jerry's made this announcement, the BDS movement celebrated this because they thought this is a victory. And it really, again, underscored that it has nothing to do with what's happening in Judea and Samaria, but they ultimately want all of Israel. It's got nothing to do with promoting Palestinian rights, but denying Israel our rights. And what I think was not anticipated, perhaps not by Unilever, was the fierce reaction, the reaction in the pro-Israel community, in the Jewish world, reaction in Congress. We've seen here about 7 or 8 states that divested about almost $1 billion. We've seen the Securities and Exchange Commission investigating them. We've seen a plethora of legal cases, including by our organization, with one of the first ones that we launched in the United States against Unilever. So I think at the end also this overwhelming legal pressure, financial pressure, and certainly the PR aspect really brought Unilever to the table where they decided to negotiate on an outcome that at the end of the day was, as I say, a clear and unequivocal condemnation of the BDS movement, which they also made very clear in their statement after announcing the selling of the rights to Avi Zinger.
Yeah, this seemed to, the parent company, I mean, it seemed all along to be, I don't know if catch them off guard, but certainly not in line with anything they wanted to see happening here, or that they never really wanted to be mired in a story like this or getting this kind of attention. And I think you mentioned, right, the financial aspects, the PR that surrounded this. When you're out there advocating for these issues, I mean, I know this from some experience that this isn't even on the top 10 list for a lot of these CEOs, the politicians. They're not really paying attention to this issue. So when you find that this comes in front of them, they're not as hostile as you'd expect, or at least they're open to seeing reason on these issues. I mean, what are you encountering when you're sort of bringing up this subject with people that don't typically deal with it?
Look, most business owners, they care about profit. They care about making a positive contribution, not investing in these extremist ideologies that Ben and Jerry has. And when you talk about these companies, they want to employ people. When you talk about when you speak to the Palestinians themselves, which was part of our claim that we initiated against Ben and Jerry's on behalf of a Palestinian, and he actually said in this claim that it is, you talk about Palestinian rights, but it is I, a Palestinian, and my community that suffers. And if you do want to make an actual positive contribution, invest in jobs, not in denying jobs, not in denying opportunities, because ultimately they are the ones that suffer, which again underscores that BDS couldn't care less about Palestinians. They only care about denying Israel our rights at the end of the day.
Yeah, we've seen this, recent examples is, opening up the box, but it was SodaStream or places that have large factories with many Palestinian employees, Palestinian managers, as pressure being on these companies to potentially close shop or move, harmful on a lot of levels. Arsen Ostrovsky, thanks for being with us from the International Legal Forum. Important topic, and back to ice cream, I guess, for Ben and Jerry's here in Israel. At least let's get rid of the negative taboo around it. At least we can do that. So thanks for joining us. We are stepping out, though, for another break here on Zoom In.